All right, so we got another great episode of the Contractor Business Builder podcast. We have the honor of hosting Jaap Siekman. He is the founder of Transformix Consulting. Really excited to dive into some of the great content today. How are you doing today, Jaap?
I'm awesome. Thank you so much, Derek. And thanks for
Right
having me.
on. Yeah, definitely. So can you tell us a little bit about who you are, your background, and what you do with Transformix Consulting?
Absolutely. So, yeah, my background is in engineering. I'm a mechanical engineer by education, worked in all kinds of manufacturing, blue collar type businesses around construction, that sort of things. Did years of project management, quality control or quality assurance, a lot of lean or continuous improvement, and found myself in some other things, started mentoring people, coaching people, and I actually learned that I like to educate, help other people, and that I had gained a whole lot of good experience over the years. And so about 5.5 years ago now, I decided to become a business coach.
Yeah.
Called myself Transformix Consulting because, it's all about transforming or change of a business. Now, there's a lot of business coaches out there, leadership coaches, executive coaches that do marketing and that sort of things. So I'm none of that. I focus purely on the organizational and operational aspects of a business and helping a business owner, improve their business in those areas. So that's what I do, and that's what Transformix is about.
Yeah, wonderful. And yeah, it definitely aligns with your technical background and, engineering and things like that. And I,
Yeah,
I think we align really well on that side of, the operations and systems processes, all that good stuff. And like you
yeah.
mentioned, change is a big part of it. And I think that's where I think that's often a big hurdle for contractors is the implementation. The strategies and even the systems and stuff like that are fairly readily available and understandable, but actually getting the change to happen within an organization and implementing is a big hurdle or roadblock for a lot of contractors. So with your clients, what are some common challenges that they face, with their operations and how do you help them?
Common challenges. If I look at my clients over these years, basically, well, first of all, they're relatively small companies, say $1 to $5 million, under 50 people. They're all blue collar, manufacturing,
Mhm.
construction, trades. Common challenges with my clients and the clients are business owners, that they're basically all overworked. They're stressed out.
Yeah.
They cannot keep up with demand. Their sales is not a problem. They have lots of demand and they're struggling to produce. Some of them, they have issues with retention and morale of their staff. They have productivity issues. Productivity is a big word in Canada as well. Productivity in general of our small and medium enterprises. Because of all that, or on top of that, profitability is not always there.
Mhm.
Some are, despite everything, they are actually making good money. But some, they're like, I had one client, he was like 1.4% at the bottom line. You're not gonna survive on that. And they want to work less. They want to work towards retirement or selling a business. But because of how they're organized, there's nothing to sell. The business is them with a bunch of people that help them out with the work, but that's not something that you can sell depending on the type of the business. So that's sort of a range of problems that I see, with all my clients, and that's what I help them resolve.
Yeah, I think you mentioned a lot of definitely the big, however many it was there, seven or so, issues that contractors face. And I think depending on, I mean, the size of the company and also the kind of where in the journey the entrepreneur is at, different parts of those issues or challenges will come up. Two of
Yeah.
the big ones I think you hit on the nail on the head there was, the stress and overwhelm and, the business has maybe got a little bit unmanageable or
Yeah.
outside of the ability to manage everything well for the contractor. And that's generally why, they're wearing too many hats and doing a lot of stuff. And then you also mentioned about the morale and the team and stuff like that. What do you think are some of the kind of the root issues, I guess, of contractors kind of getting to that point where they're overwhelmed and stressed? And what would you suggest they do, or how do you help them with their operations to, alleviate some of their workload for them?
Well, I guess there's sort of two questions in there. I think what you're
Yeah.
asking is like, okay, how do I go about, helping my clients, and the specific issue of business owners or contractors that are overwhelmed. Let me talk a little bit about, what I do with my program, because I probably
Yeah.
capture both. So my overall approach is very much the same as when you go for a trip, and what do? You open up your phone and you type in your destination. You type in, or Google comes up with the location where you're starting from. And then Google comes up with the roadmap to get there. Go left, go right, that sort of things. So basically, I do the same thing. When I start working with a new client, my very first question is, what is your vision for the business and for yourself? What is it that you want to achieve? What's your BHAG, your big, hairy, audacious goal? What's the timeline for getting there? And that's actually usually already a great discussion because people haven't really thought about that. The answer is like, well, I want to grow my business. Well, want to grow my business is not a goal. It's not a SMART goal. It's not specific. Therefore, it's not measurable. There's no timeline to it. And so the question is, okay, you want to grow to 5 million revenue, 10 million, 100 million revenue, and by when, right? So usually a BHAG, the timeline is 5 to 15 years or something. Yep. So that's the big goal, and we define something. And once we have that, we can add more resolution. It's like, okay, where do we want to be in 3 years from now? For all the functions in your business, your marketing, your sales, your operations, your HR, finance, IT, whatever else. What are your 1 year goals for each of those? What do we have to have achieved, for in those areas in order to say, okay, we're on our way to, those bigger goals. Then we set some high level strategies and identify your projects that we can start working on. So having that destination, that vision for the business first is key. That's where we start off. And the second step is to figure out where we are currently. What's the current state of the business? With that, I start with the org chart, the organizational structure of the business. Book behind me, the E-Myth by Michael Gerber. That's all what he is about. Understand how your organization looks like. And once you have your org chart, your current org chart on paper, it also shows why the owner is busy, because in all the boxes for the disciplines that I just mentioned, your marketing, sales, operations, and everything, the owner's name is in all the boxes. He runs everything. So the org chart is the first component of understanding where the business is right now. We talk about process map, mapping out the order execution or delivery process as it stands. Step by step, identify the weaknesses there, handovers from one person to another, which is always where errors occur. We identify the tools that we're using, the output that people are creating. This is a brainstorm with multiple people. And while people are talking and coming up with the next step, there's already discussions like, oh, you do this way, I do it differently. Well, why? Because it shouldn't. So doing that brainstorm and mapping out the whole process, we identify weaknesses and areas where we can improve stuff. And the third component of the current state assessment is probably the part that I like the most fun, and that is an open brainstorm. And I do 2 of those. I do one with the management team or the ownership team, and the open brainstorm is all about tell me everything that we're not great at, everything that you don't like about the business, things that we want to improve, should improve, can improve. Tell me everything. And to give this a little bit of structure, I use a Ishikawa or fishbone diagram, and we apply buckets sort of, on the bones of the fish to group the various ideas. So, we would have a bucket for the space, that we work in the shop, one for systems, for processes, for management, for the equipment, for materials, right? And so while, this team is coming up with ideas, we talk about them, they write them down on a sticky, and, we put them on the board. And, by the time that we're done, usually takes about 2 hours, we have a lot of stickies on that board. Now, usually what happens is that there's always a little bit of finger pointing to the staff, right? They're not loyal. They don't do their work properly. There's quality issues, there's whatever. But then I do the same exercise with the staff, so we kick out the management from the room. Just staff, this is, the guys with the coveralls and the hair and the tattoos. And I got 10 of those, electricians or whatever it is in there. And we do the same thing. This is your time to bitch about the company, in a friendly way. And they do. They have lots of ideas, lots of things where they want the company to improve. But the best thing that I have found over these years, doing these, is that where, the management was pointing a little bit, towards the staff about all of the things that they do wrong. The staff, turns out, they're dedicated to their job. They want to do a good job. They're proud of the company. They're proud of themselves. They want to do a better job. They want the company to do well because they understand that if the company does well, they can pay them, and that's good for them. There's just one problem, that's the management, right? Mm-hmm. They are in the way in many cases of improving stuff. They're not listening, that sort of things. And so these two parties, they're sort of pointing to each other. And I look at this like, okay, why don't they talk? But they don't, right? They don't talk in a constructive manner about everything that holds them up. And so I take those findings back to the management and I present that. And it's like, wow, this is interesting, right? Yeah. So once we know the vision, we have the organizational structure. We have all the long list of issues. We know how the process looks like. We can gather all the findings and put those in an action list. And that's the third step. That's the roadmap that Google Map produces. So we got a long list of stuff that we need to work on, that we can improve on. And then it's part of, then it comes down to execution. That's where you started off with, executing the implementation of things. That's the hardest. And that's where a lot of change programs, literature says about 70% of change programs fail despite, having the strategy and everything in place due to the execution. Yeah. And, the execution of change is hard. It takes somebody, with dedication, with the skill set to pursue this and to push this through despite whatever resistance there is, to do this on a consistent, method, every week, every month. Okay, what's next? So I help them set up that action plan. I help them prioritizing, because this is a list of 50 items. We can only work on 2 to 5 maybe, right? So what are the things where we want to start? So prioritizing, I help them set up a team that's going to manage the whole change program. I show them, what are the steps, what are the things that we need to do in order to make a change program successful. I refer for that, to some information from John Kotter. He's like a change guru out of the States, and he created an 8-step model for change. So that's generally my approach. And then, so after all this is set up, I help them, I coach them, through the execution. I bring in other tools, from my toolbox, workshops that I have or slide decks, for example, on project management, if that's required. And so there's components of education that I bring in. Yeah. So that's sort of, what I do or how my process looks like.
Yeah, no, thanks for unpacking that and, letting us know the process. And a few things that I gathered out of that is just similar to a construction project. The more pre-planning and pre-construction or implementation work that you can do, the better the implementation process is going to be, because you've identified what's important and you've also got the buy-in now of both management as well as your workforce and the field guys, because one without the other, just as you say, like one side can bitch about the other and the other to each side, that once they both realize that in the end the goals are similar, the direction of the business is going to benefit everyone. And having the buy-in from both parties is definitely essential, because often what happens is, as management or the business owner has these wonderful great ideas of how to improve the business, but the only knowledge that the field guys get is like, hey, we're going to do it this way, and here's the SOP and the training manual, and this is what I want you to do from now on. And there's no buy-in when that happens, and it's just
can I touch on that a little bit with a little bit of an anecdote?
Yeah, definitely.
So first of all, I just mentioned John Kotter and his 8-step model for change, and the very first step in that 8-step model is to have a vision, for whatever it is that you want to achieve with the changes, and to be able to communicate with that change with your staff, with the company. If you can't communicate that vision, or there is no vision, then what are we doing this for, right? And so the tool that I use to create that vision in a presentable way is called the transformation map, and it's one page in which we write down that BHAG and all the different goals and everything. So it's a one-page visual thing that that people will understand. I mean, most of us technical folks, we are visual, and we can understand a one-page thing with blurbs on goals and strategies and everything. So that transformation map is the tool that a business owner can use to communicate the vision with the staff. So I was in a situation in the northern part of BC with a trades company. Let's leave it at that. And the owner, we went through this whole process of everything that I just mentioned, and we prepared a rollout, of her whole vision and plan and everything, to her staff. And so we created a slide deck, and she was, this was a lady owner. Mm-hmm. She was very nervous about this, having to do this presentation to her staff, right? But I prepared her well. She did the whole thing, and she phones me up later, and she's like, "Jaap, this went really, really well. I was so nervous, but I went through the whole thing. But then after, two of my guys, they walked up to me and they said, we understand what it is that you want to achieve. How can we help?" And that was just such a relief to her. And in fact, every time that I tell this story, I get goosebumps. Still, it's funny, but that's actually, that was the best that we could imagine, to achieve there. She got the buy-in right there from her people, and that was such a relief for her. Yeah. And so having that vision communicated with everybody, that's part of the alignment.
No, that's a wonderful story, and brings back some memories for me too. Growing up through running companies and stuff like that, and having to express your vision and what you want to achieve to employees, especially when you're not used to presenting in that way or talking to your employees. As kind of the business owner, sometimes we get in the habit of being more like we want to be kind of friendly with them, or we are more specific on what we want to do, but not so much with sharing about the business, or maybe some of the other side of the business that doesn't apply to the field work and things like that. So it's great to hear that they were so accepting and wanted to help in that regard, which was wonderful. And I think a lot of this ties back to communication as well. And often the limit of a company is the business owner, of course. If you take a CEO that's run I don't know, 8-figure, 9-figure business, and you put them in, a small business, they're going to be able to do a lot of, grow the business very rapidly. So often it's not that the business has a limit, it's more that the owner has a limit as far as their progress and growth and ability to communicate and wherewithal with operating the business. So you mentioned a few key concepts. Is there any other different kind of concepts or mindsets or techniques that you use to help facilitate, either building out the operations of a business or helping businesses change?
Different concepts. Well, I think I captured, my whole approach.
Maybe let me rephrase that. So we've got to the point where you've created a slide deck for change. You've figured out sort of what needs to happen. The implementation process moves forward. What happens at that point as far as like feedback from the implementation, and then also knowing when it's actually working inside a company? Because sometimes, from my experience, there can be something that gets rolled out, but it never really, there's not enough continuous involvement or follow-up, and it kind of just gets, put on the shelf, or things start to slide back into old habits. So how do you continue to help the client to make sure that this change is going to happen, and it's going to happen, permanently and for the long haul?
Yeah, I know that is a good question. What is it? Concept theory or the acronym of PDCA, I quite often bring that up. That's the Deming cycle, which stands for plan, do, check, act. Because what happens a lot is that, a new process, gets developed, thrown over the fence. It's like, hey, we got a new process, we got a new checklist or whatever it is, you start using it. And then people use it for a little bit, but there's no follow-up, there's no enforcement. Yep. People actually don't really use it, or they create it, but it doesn't add value to the whole process. And then the whole thing dies. Mm-hmm. And then, later on, people start complaining. It's like, hey, well, we had this checklist, why are we not using this? Yeah. So I clarify that, just creating something and implementing it. It's like, okay, now we have a new checklist. That's only half of the equation. It's only the start. We got to follow up. We got to monitor. Okay, is this working, guys? How can we further improve this? Does it do what we try to achieve here? Is it counterproductive? So we need to analyze, its performance, and then only when we realize or when we confirm that, okay, yes, this was an improvement, then we can say, okay, guys, this is now the new process. We're using this. And then there needs to be mutual enforcement by everybody to say, okay, yeah, this is a great process and we're going to use this. For every time that something goes wrong, then, there needs to be a process where people can provide that feedback, back to the management, like, hey, this was an error that was made, and whatever that was, but we should come up with a way to prevent this. And so this is a process that I bring up with most of my clients, and it's about NCRs, or non-conformance reports. So NCRs, they originate from manufacturing in a relationship with a vendor. So you would get a part in, and you would do your inspection, and there's something wrong, and so the client would send out an NCR back to the vendor. But we can use NCRs within a business for anything that goes wrong. Information that's missing. The address was wrong on the bill of lading, and so whatever we produced went to a wrong address. How did that happen, right? But it costs us money, effort. We have to redo the whole thing. So this is worth an NCR. So how does that look like? Somebody writes up an NCR. This was the problem. We need to fix, the actual problem first, right? So we need to make sure that the part actually gets to the client. But then the question is, okay, why did this happen? What was the root cause of this? Mm-hmm. Then there's a discussion about, okay, how can we prevent this, from happening again? What are the possible solutions, changes? What do we feel is the best solution? So we got to pick one. Then we got to come up with an action or actions or a project, to make that change, in the quality system, in the processes and procedures that we have. Yeah. And then, go through the PDCA cycle of implementing this change. So NCR program, non-conformance reporting, terrific way for what I refer to as reactive in continuous improvement. It's like, just do whatever you do, but whenever you find an error, we find a way to make it better. Yeah, definitely. That's a humongous tool. Yeah, and I think that communication, like you said, with the field guys, they'll be very happy to tell you what's not going right if you give them the space and the trust to share themselves, explicitly and without retribution or what have you. But yeah, definitely the consistent improvement. I often call it going upstream or upriver and kind of getting to the root of the issue or the root of the cause. When you're dealing with the same problem over and over and over again, that's a really bad problem. When you're getting new problems, so that's sometimes a good good notification that you're moving into new territory or things are changing in the right direction when you have new problems that come up. But always be looking upstream. So to switch gears here a little bit, you'd mentioned it earlier about often the business owner being filling all the boxes within the organization chart. So they're the marketer, they're the project manager, they're the salesperson, often sometimes doing admin work or whatever, right? As well as having, employees or people kind of move through the organization and that retention rate of employees. I think those things can sometimes go hand in hand, and also like have the contractor sometimes a little bit hesitant to give up certain jobs and parts of what they're doing. Can you share with us how you would propose or how you work with your clients to get them some of those boxes delegated to the right employees so that they can stop wearing all the hats and doing kind of everything and have key people in the different parts of their organization chart? Yeah, no, for sure. But that's it starts with the org chart, right? So one of the very first exercises, as I mentioned earlier, is to write down the org chart as it looks right now. And two terms that come up in that discussion is responsibility and accountability, and the difference between the two. So I explained that when you are responsible for a task, you're expected to do the task, period. Yeah. You do that work. When you are accountable for the task, you need to make sure that the task happens. But whether you do it or you delegate it to somebody else in your group or whatever, that doesn't matter. You need to make sure that it happens. And so when I clarify that, when you look at the basic, the top org chart with the marketing manager and the sales manager and the operations manager and yada yada yada, the names that are in those boxes should be people that are accountable for that area of the business. The operations manager is accountable for operations, and the same for sales. And so when I start filling this in with the owner, what happens quite often is that I ask, okay, who's the sales manager? The sales manager? Who's accountable for sales? Yep. Well, that's Johnny. Okay. So how do you work with Johnny? Do you tell him every day, what to do? Or does Johnny know the mission of sales? They know what needs to be done. They know, the goals. They know the tools. They have a lead list. They have authority, to go out and meet with clients and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Johnny, does what he needs to do in order to get the sales. And, maybe you talk to him every day, but that's about, general stuff. You give him direction. He formally reports to you, once a week or whatever that is. And he goes about doing his own thing. And then quite often the answer is like, well, no, Johnny, I tell Johnny what to do.
Yeah.
So then it's like, okay, Johnny is not in that box. It's you, right? So I take Johnny out. I put Johnny, below, but the owner goes back into the box. And so then when the owner thought that maybe he had people in locations of or in spots of accountability, he doesn't. And so the org chart looks like owner and the owner in all the boxes.
Yeah.
And so I have one particular slide that says, okay, which business has more value? Business A, where it's the owner in all the boxes, or business B, where you have the owner in the box of the president and different names in all the other boxes. Mm-hmm. And of course, company B has a better sellability. That's a business that you can sell. So once we have had that discussion, business owners, they start to better understand this concept of, okay, what does it mean, to have somebody in a box? And, it's not delegating tasks and work that make our life as a business owner, more or less stressful. It's delegating accountability. And that's exactly what the E-Myth is about with Michael Gerber. You got to delegate that accountability so that, hey, you got your mission for sales, go out and do it, right? So now the owner doesn't need to do that every day again, or, every hour of the day. They can now rely on Johnny to go out there and get the sales. So I would say that generally, sales and operations are the key components. And depending on the client, what he prefers to do and where he's best at, one of these two are the ones where we start, either promoting somebody from within or hiring a new person to take over that management role. So accountability, responsibility, org chart, that's really where we start to alleviate, the workload of the owner.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying and making the distinction between responsibility and accountability and how we can sometimes think we may have delegated some tasks, but we haven't delegated or created clear communication as to what that person should actually be doing in that role, so that we're not constantly having to make the decisions or tell someone, what they should be doing day to day. So very important. So now that, let's say you've got a business owner, they've been able to get the right people in the right boxes and delegated the accountability. How do we keep our employees long-term, especially key people within an organization? How do we improve the turnover rate of the different people?
One of the things that I promote is for the owner to have regular one-on-ones with their staff. For some staff that can be, monthly. For others, it may be once every month, every 2 months, every quarter, every year. But having these one-on-ones, they're part performance review, but the most important part is to get to know your staff. What is it they want to do with their career? Are they how do they feel about their jobs?
Yep.
Like, where do they want to grow? Is there anything in there? What hidden skill sets do they have that we are not aware of? If they had some extra training, that would be useful for the business. Mm-hmm. And so how can the business help the employee to get that training so that they can help the business to grow further? But really to get to know your people is important. Lean or continuous improvement and the 8 wastes that are described in lean. And waste number 8 is underutilized resources. And a component of that is having people with skills that we're not aware of. And I had some very interesting examples of that, this over the last year or so. I was at a bakery, with pastry bakers, and I did my open brainstorm with 4 people from the kitchen. And it was, one gentleman, it was 3 ladies, and I was talking about something, and the guy didn't really get what I was saying. And one of the girls, she sort of translated and told him in her words what I was trying to say. And so he got it. And this happened the second time. And so I asked her, it's like, what's your background here? Because, right? And she's like, well, I was at UBC in the aeronautics program for 3 years. And I'm like, whoa, why was this of interest? Because the owner and the personnel, they were very serious about creating SOPs, standard operating procedures / recipes for
Mhm.
how to make, whatever whatever they were making there. And I'm like, this girl is the perfect, staff member to create these SOPs, right?
Mhm.
She got that mindset to write
Yeah.
down in a logical way of, for how to make pastries.
Yep.
And the owner wasn't aware of that background. So,
Mhm.
and similar situations have occurred later on. So understanding your people, what is it that they want? Do they want to grow? Do they want to grow into a supervisory role, into project management, into different disciplines? How can we help them, to achieve that? So having that, those open discussions in a constructive manner, finish those one-on-ones with actions.
Yep.
Then the next time that we sit together, hold them accountable, to those actions. Okay, we signed you up for the training. Did you actually finish that? Right. So follow up on all that. But that's how we basically, we create professional development, personal development. And, so when your people can grow, they will help you grow the business.
Mhm.
So having those one-on-ones, that's one great way to help, your people. In terms of retention, it's really about, listening, to what's going on. This one example of this manufacturing company comes to mind in the interior, where they had a massive problem with retention. So basically, the retention of 10 shop guys that they had hired over the year prior that I was there was 10%. 9 of the 10 guys that they had hired was gone
Yep.
by the time that I was there. Only one was
Wow.
still there. And that was a problem because this was, this was causing the lead time for their main products to balloon to like 4 years. And so we did this whole open brainstorm, with the shop guys, and we identified about 4 or 5 root causes for why people were leaving, and it had to do with the job ads that didn't reflect the reality, with a manager who was abusive, with the training that didn't happen, with the job itself that didn't reflect or that was different from what they were expecting. So there was 4 or 5 root causes, and the process wasn't clear. People really didn't know what to do. They didn't know who the boss was. So we identified all these issues. They seriously started working on this, and I got a phone call 1 or 2 months after I was there by the owner, who's remote, and he's like, yeah, the difference in morale is unbelievable.
Mhm.
After this short time period of time, it's
Yeah.
unreal. And
Mhm.
so just understanding, what people are thinking about and what's going on, that's
Yeah.
really key. So you got
Mhm.
to have those relationships and get that feedback in a constructive manner, and then do
Yeah.
something with it.
Definitely. Oh, that's wonderful. Lots of gems there for sure for people to pick up on. And the one-to-one meetings definitely super important. How often would you consider having one-on-one meeting with employees? I'm sure like the organization size has something to do with it, but let's say typical, like you said, maybe 5 million or less, they've got 10 employees, 10 to 15 employees. How often do you think the owner should be doing one-on-ones?
Well, I think an owner should do this once a month with their key managers. With regular staff, if it's a small business or like 15 people, I would say, maybe once every 6 months or every 12 months. Can also be depending on the person, right? So some folks, they may need a little bit more hand holding and development.
Yep.
Maybe there's some more concerns about the performance, so, maybe you want to start off, with once a month and then taper it down once we get some traction in terms of performance improvement.
That,
Because
that makes
the
sense.
one-on-ones, I talked about, the professional development. Okay, what is it that you want to do? Yada, yada, yada. But we should start off with a bit of a performance section where basically we touch on things that can be performance improving or enhancing. So
Yep.
these are things where people are actually doing a good job, but if they were to change something, that they could actually do even better job. But there's also things that people are doing or not doing that are affecting their job. And there may be things that are job threatening. And
Yeah.
so if there's any of those, we need to address those in an open manner. Like, okay, this needs to change. And if not, that may be, leading to the exit. So we
Mhm.
need to be very clear and then also do the follow-ups. And that for the owner, that starts to create the paper trail that any HR person or even the courts would look for when you
Yep.
do let somebody go.
Mhm. Yeah,
But
definitely.
it's all
Wise advice there for sure.
yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, I love how you mentioned, the training part of it and asking them what their long-term goals are. And I think when you invest in your employees, when you invest in your people with good training and even just investing and getting some operations and processes in place and making their job easier and lessening the confusion that they may have around their job, those employees will pay dividends with investing back into the company when they know that they're appreciated and that you're not just trying to get a dollar out of them, but you're actually trying to improve them as a person. They can be more effective and grow
Yeah.
with inside the company for sure.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
we've gone the full gambit here as far as the operations and you've got your people in place. So that's awesome. Now, I know you mentioned in the beginning that, you had a company that was, had maybe about 1% profit. I would say even some small businesses, even just having any profit seems like a big goal because they don't really know where their finances are at. What are some key things that you look at early on when you take a look at a company's financials, and what are some like kind of tasks or ways that they can become more profitable?
So I'm not a CPA or anything like that, right? So I don't necessarily look at the financial statements themselves.
Mhm.
I do ask, do you have monthly statements
Yeah.
that you are using to monitor, the business and manage the business from? In particular, I always talk about a KPI dashboard or key performance indicators, on a dashboard, meaning we don't just have numbers, but we put them in the chart. Because again, most of us are visual people. A chart tells us way more than a bunch of numbers. So if we have lines that are going down or going up, and depending on what it is, this is good or bad, that tells us a story. It tells us what the trends are. If we see that the funnel is going down, the sales funnel, we know that eventually we're going to have a problem. And so before that, the numbers themselves, show that we have an issue, we see that the line is trending down. So, hey, guys, we need to speed up the sales again a little bit. But as you just mentioned, a lot of business owners, your businesses, they don't have their financials in order. They don't have monthly statements. They know what's sort of in the bank. They know, because they're running everything. They know, they have work,
Yeah.
but what the actual numbers are, they have no idea. So gross margins, net margins, they don't have a lot of them. They don't have a real grasp on those. And so I ask the questions about financial statements, KPIs, and if there's no answers to those, or the answers are negative, or they come up with like, our profits are not that great. Well, what is your net profit? Then we know that there's something that we need to work on, and profitability is a component. And profitability has everything to do with operational efficiency. So how can we make more money out of the revenue? And where's that money going? So if I can tell you one example of that, I was at a manufacturing company, and it was the very first session that we had. It was at the owner's living room at home, because we didn't have a boardroom at work. We had the whole team sitting there, and we were brainstorming, and the discussion comes up on rework, and they talk about it a lot. And so it's like, what about this rework? Give me a number last month. How much rework did you have in terms of dollars? And the operations manager sort of like, well, about $30,000, and this is a $3 million company. And so I'm like, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Is that typical, or was it just that month? And it was like, no, this is sort of typical. So they were throwing away about $350,000 every year, like which is 10% of the revenue. And we figured out, right there what the cause was. I told them what to do. Usually I don't tell people what to do because I'm a coach, right? But I was like, okay, you need to start doing this. And they basically did. And that had dramatic effects on the financials of the company and the owner as a person. So just understanding, where you are losing your money, that's where you start, to improve your financials.
Yeah, and super important as well. As you mentioned earlier, a lot of, the goal for a lot of business owners is, you want to grow, you want to get more revenue in. But if you don't have a good understanding of your financials and you're not profitable at this point, doubling or tripling the size of your company is just going to give you a whole lot more problems and no more money at the end of the day. So you're just creating, more difficulty for yourself. You have to kind of get your house in order first before you look to expand and grow, because it'll just be that much easier once your operations are in check and your profits are in check and you have the right people and your organization chart. So it's very important to do the kind of the hard work first of getting the business in order before. It's not always easy, but the easier part of, bringing in more clients or growing, the business revenues and things like that. So so much wonderful information here, and I really like how you shared a lot of like specific examples from clients of yours. What's the best way for people to connect with you to learn more about your coaching and the work that you do?
I would say email or LinkedIn,
Okay,
right? So I'm
perfect.
on LinkedIn. When you post this, you can probably put my address in there, my email address. That would be the best way.
All right. Yep. So yeah, we'll put the email address as well as LinkedIn link in the description. So go check that out. Check out some of the content, and then reach out to Jaap here to learn more about his services and coaching. Any final words of wisdom or last topics you wanted to touch on before we go?
Word of wisdom. Yeah, it happens, when, I get referred to somebody, potential client, and we have a chat. And then the answer is like, yeah, I'm too busy now. I need to do something else first. And, they are in the middle of a fight,
Yep.
fight for their existence. And so
Mhm.
my advice is don't wait,
Yep.
don't wait to reach out. Let's have a chat, because the things that you're struggling with are possibly things that I can help with resolve. So
Yep.
instead of, it's like, yeah, I need to lose weight before I go to the gym.
Yeah.
It's sort of the similar thing. So, people that are struggling with their business, with their personal life, as a result of the business, I mean, these days people talk a lot about mental health. I'm not a
Yep.
counselor, but I do know that when you're totally stressed out, at the business, that will affect your mental health. So I'm
Mhm.
not going to talk about mental health, but I'm going to help you solve the root causes. And I've done that with some clients. So don't wait, don't procrastinate, just reach out. Let's have a chat.
Definitely. And yeah, so important that, if you don't change, nothing changes, right? And why not get some help from someone who's done this with multiple other clients and seen a lot of different
Yeah.
businesses go through. Often as entrepreneurs, we're very solo oriented because you've got a million and one things to do inside your business, and you're not really aware of what's out there. So getting someone to come in, get a fresh perspective and a bigger start, and help you along the process will just make a world of difference. So wonderful advice. Thanks so much for coming on here, Jaap, and really appreciate you and your time today.
Thanks, Derek. It was a pleasure being here.